Welcome to the West Michigan Marketing Show, where we spotlight marketing leaders and business innovators making an impact in our community. I'm Rebecca VanDenBerg, and in this episode, I'm thrilled to introduce Ben Weatherston, who is a commercial and editorial photographer. Ben has over 25 years of experience, and I personally, after working with him, I can tell you he has a keen eye for what businesses need when it comes to photography for their marketing needs and their business needs. So today we'll explore his background and his journey and share with West Michigan what they need to think about when it comes to photography for their business. So let's dive in. Welcome, Ben.
Welcome. Good morning.
So glad you could join us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. We just want to talk a little bit about your journey. How did you get into photography and your background? What led you to having a career of over 25 years in it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I learned photography as a kid, as a middle schooler, I guess, from my dad. We grew up moving a lot. And so some of our hobbies we had to acquire from within our own family. And so whether that's music or sports or different things like that, a lot of it came from our parents. And so my dad taught me photography, film photography back in the day, way before digital stuff. And it was a fun hobby passion thing. I originally went to school to be a teacher. And so I thought from a young age that I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. It wasn't until I actually got into school for that program that I was like, oh, I started questioning myself. I don't know if I want to do this. There was something I still loved about the idea of teaching, but then I had a hard time reconciling with that, with maybe what it would actually look like to have a career as a teacher. So I dual enrolled while I was going to the university for teaching. I went to the community college for photography. And that kind of sealed the deal. Eventually, I just stopped my teaching career or pursuits. And I continued for photography. I ended up moving out to California to do that, to try it as a profession. And I ended up moving back to Michigan in 2000. So I tell people I started like charging for jobs. I was a young guy, but I started charging for jobs around 97, and that was all still film. And then fast forward, and I found out that the career in photography is just as tumultuous. There were times where I felt like I'll do anything, I'll shoot anything, whatever you need me to take a picture of, I'll do it. But I quickly realized that's not a good business model, and that's not a sustainable path forward. It wasn't until I got a job in the marketing department at a health system. So what we now think of as Trinity Health, that was St. Joseph Mercy Health System in Ann Arbor. And I worked there for 9 years in the marketing department as the photographer and creative media specialist, and did all kinds of crazy stuff, video, web, audio. But that is where I realized what I was trying to do by shooting anything and everything wasn't what I was actually good at. And inside the marketing department is where I realized, oh, I'm good at this. I'm good at sitting in a meeting, listening to a department head or marketing chief, and then being able to translate what their idea is into some version of synthesizing my own ideas and bringing that into tangible products and services. I can do this. And so after 9 years there, I ended up embarking into freelance. I did that for another 5 years. And that is where I actually found all of my success as a business person, was in the freelance world. After I left the marketing department, I was part owner of a magazine in Ann Arbor for 5 years and did all of their photography, and I was the photo editor there. And so that taught me a lot, but it was my day in, day out work with clients that helped me see, oh, commercial photography is specialized. And it's, even though I'll shoot lots of different things, my job, and we can talk about this later, my job is this one thing, and that's engaging with business owners and business people. and providing deliverables. What's funny though is, and I always have to bring this back around, is that years later, I ended up teaching at the college where I learned photography. And yeah, even though I didn't have any, I thought I was shutting the door on teaching, I ended up coming all the way back around, and I taught studio photography and photojournalism there for several years. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So I have a couple of questions for you that come to mind. Do you remember the first photo you took and developed in college that made you go, wow, this is fun. I love this. Do you have a memory of a photo? Because I ask from a personal perspective, I have a memory in my photo bank when I was a kid, when I took a photography class and we got to do the darkroom development, and it was black and white. So I have a couple of those and I wonder if you have that too. Do you have a couple that you're like, wow, this is awesome?
Yeah, so even all through high school, I was taking pictures on film and sending them off to the lab, but working in the darkroom was another experience. And I remember, I don't know the very first one, it was probably garbage, but I remember one of the first ones, and it ended up getting published in a thing at the school, but it was just a picture of a flower, but I was heavily like pushing the film so that it would just explode the grain of the film, which we don't even have anymore. But I don't think I will be able to forget that photo for a long time. And then I remember the first time that I was in the studio photography class, and we were controlling our lights, we were gelling our lights, and then we didn't even get to shoot that on negative film. So there was no darkroom. We took it to developed, and they were slides.
Okay.
And the feeling of, you take a picture and you cannot do anything to it. You can't even adjust the brightness. Like whatever you shot, that's what we're going to show up on the wall for the whole class to see. There was something very thrilling about that, but it was very much like everything on that picture I did. I controlled it. I decided it. It was very intentional. And there were some photos in there that, again, I probably won't ever be able to forget. They were super cheesy student photos, but they were just burned in my memory.
Well, and I don't think that kids today can appreciate, you couldn't take, I guess you could take 10 and only pick the best one, but you weren't previewing them on the back of your camera and deleting all the bad ones.
Yeah, and we did have, I don't know, some of the professional photographers might remember Polaroid backs, where I could take my medium format camera, take the back off, put a Polaroid back, and then take the picture and then look at the Polaroid on it.
I don't know if I've ever seen that. I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't think I've ever seen it. So
yeah, it was so cool. But there were times when I would, on a corporate shoot on film, I would spend 2 rolls of negatives for one picture. And you'd compose it and change it and bracket it and do all the different things, and you're hoping that one of them is the shot.
So
yeah, it's not like that anymore.
we have the shortcut to being able to preview them today. So that's cool. Very cool. So take me back to the days working at the health system in the marketing department. What were some of the things that you thought, you mentioned you've discovered how it's perform well at understanding, taking a concept that you hear and bringing that to fruition and delivering the visuals that encapsulated whatever emotion or idea that they wanted to campaign. Take me back to a couple of those that you thought were your biggest wins.
Yeah, there were some that, when you're in healthcare, and any of your healthcare viewers or clients or friends will understand this, there are some times when you want to communicate, and it's such a cliche, but the cutting edge medicine, or leading edge, or high tech, or the newest and greatest stuff, that has a different visual impact than the bedside manners and the care and the softness. And so there is a harder and softer side of healthcare, and people in meetings don't always know how to communicate what they want to feel when they see the end result. So if we're doing an annual report for either a hospital or one of the parts of the hospital, because it's very a conglomerate type thing, it's easy for someone to say, I want it to look this way, but then you don't end up with a cohesive unit in terms of the finished product. And I'm sure you've experienced this with a website. If people are sending you all sorts of crazy stuff, but the website doesn't feel like a whole, then you might not feel like you've accomplished your goal.
Right.
We would do the same thing with videos. We produced a television show with the local, I don't know if Channel 7 in Detroit, but we ended up winning an Emmy for that. And the idea of everything we do here needs to feel the same way.
Yep.
When you're in a meeting, how does a person whose job is this one specific branch of science, medicine, how do they communicate that? And so a lot of times we would have to bring that to them and say, trust us, we know what to do in this situation. And some of them were actually like rejecting all of the tropes, if you will. I will let you know this. They don't do it as much now, but man, they used to do it all the time. Medicine, whenever you'd get into a lab or the people at the screens doing the radiography or whatnot, it would always be like dark with like blue lights like highlighting them. And it was such a boring trend that everyone was like, that's what I want. And we're like, but nowhere in our hospital, we spent all this money designing a hospital that was bright and like warm, and we don't have to make everything dark and blue. And so learning how to, when people bring you their own ideas, but those ideas are just based on someone else's ideas.
Something they saw somewhere in the marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to have that conversation where you say, okay, I know that's what everybody's doing, but is that what we want to do?
It's leading them to, how do you stand out? You can't stand out if you do what everybody else is doing.
Totally. And you don't want to look just like everybody else.
What do you think are some exciting trends that are happening in the marketplace with as far as imagery, video, photography, marketing? Obviously, we're seeing AI come in and become a discussion point. I don't think anybody's made their final decision on how they feel about it yet. I think everyone's testing the waters. But what are some exciting trends that you see businesses effectively using videography and photography in their business marketing?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think over the years, we've had to navigate, not just photographers, but marketers in general and business owners have had to navigate so many emerging technologies. We've never fully known exactly where the future was going. And so I remember in digital, when digital photography came out, everyone was like, oh, we won't need you anymore because now anybody can do that. We were like, I don't think that's true, but I understand what you're saying. And then when web initially came out, it was the bandwidth and the speed couldn't handle huge high resolution images. And so a lot of people thought, oh, we're not going to sink money into photography. We're going to focus more on these like texty websites. And I remember coding those in HTML as a student, and your pictures would be so tiny and pixelated. But then a few years later, WordPress comes along and everybody wants these giant hero images on their website. I think we are going to continue that. Social media changed it, but now the whole like UCG or UGC, user generated content of social, Instagram, TikTok, like that is a huge driving force of marketing today. And if anyone said, oh, I want to ignore it, that's probably a mistake. There's like a certain authenticity of just taking out your phone and recording something in your store. But if you then think that translates into every other part of your business where, oh yeah, my online storefront is just going to be cell phone shots of all my products, you might see a diminished return on that. Like you might need to balance very like grassroots guerrilla style marketing with a more polished, higher end
Yeah.
type imaging. AI is like the crazy X factor. Not only are people saying the same thing that they said many times before, oh, we won't need you anymore because of this new technology. I don't think that's true, but I understand where they're coming from and why they're saying that. I think it will have an impact, but then you have to weigh that with the people that are super savvy at recognizing AI images,
Yeah.
like an inauthenticity emotion that they get. And so if they were to see a picture of someone who's not your employee standing behind something that's not really your counter, handing someone that's not your customer something that's not really your product, but and that would scream to them, this isn't real.
Yeah.
Whereas some people might look at it and go, it looks real enough, I don't care.
Yep.
But there's a subset of your market that might be like, nope, you lost me with that. And so just learning how to navigate those waters is going to be huge. And
Yeah.
I think we'll see people who are very adept at navigating marketing, communications, imaging, production of those things, be able to even help navigate. Let me lead you on this journey. We will use some AI content. We will also hire some. We'll also make some in-house, that sort of thing. And so that's why I think like marketing firms are going to be still super important. Not to even mention, this is outside my scope, but writing.
Yeah. I think what you just described applies to every skill set that people think they're going to replace with AI. Writing, website design and development, the photography, videography. Even though those tools can create all of those things, they're not doing it at the level of either creativity or authenticity that you talked about. And the whole transparent when you put out something that's AI generated versus putting something out that's organic or original. People are there. I think there's a trend, the personal connection, face to face, and that true self. I think there's going to be a craving for that. The more the market gets flooded with AI generated, I think people will long for that real content or real connection. But I do think there's a place for those tools, kind of like icing on the cake, right? If I've got business owners, I'll give you an example. I've got a business owner who has 200 products in her online store. She has real stores, and they changed all their labels. And so we rebuilt the website. We've got products with the old label and products with the new label. And I said, let me see if I can swap the label off with AI. Unfortunately, it didn't work out at the time because her labels, there was 2 different sizes. The new ones were wrong size. Anyways, I coached her through. They don't have a budget to bring in a photographer to take product photos for 200. So I gave her some ideas and get her a light box. And she's got an employee or a student who knows enough about photography to get going. So they could take product photos themselves, but then we can run them through AI and do some some refinement for that clean product shot. But then if she wants, she could take it and we could go in and test. That's how I approach it. We got to test these things. So take those product photos and run them through AI and maybe create 1 or 2 lifestyle photos and then try them. Put them in your social media or your email marketing and see what kind of response you get. I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think you have to have a marriage of the two. But I think AI is like icing on the cake. But I think people are definitely going to crave those authentic images. And regardless of what AI can do, I think what you pointed out, people are going to recognize if they walk into your store and the photo on your website or your social feed is extra. And that's going to break that trust that you've built with them or that feeling of connection. So I think 100% of the time, real images of your store, of your business, of your people is always going to win.
Yeah. And this is, again, I forget sometimes that the technology of stock photo agencies was another thing we had to deal with, where, oh, now I can just search and find it and I don't need you anymore. But I think what you'll find, and you might even find this with AI, something we wrestled with even in the corporate world, was that in the stock photo era of I think it was Our Detroit, which is a big magazine on the East Side. Our Detroit has their top docs issue, and it's where all of the healthcare companies are going to advertise heavily in that one, and they all want their doctors featured and all of that. But I brought that into a meeting the couple weeks after it came out, and I showed them, like, here's a small clinic, and they used this stock photo, and they paid a ton of money to buy all the rights regionally for this photo. But what they didn't realize is that photographer also took this photo of the same people, just in a different order, uploaded it. It's a different picture, but you had 3 different healthcare companies using essentially the same picture, even though they paid so that it's not the same picture, but it's the same people, just in a swapped out order. And I said, this would be embarrassing if this was us. I would never want to tell our customers, like, that this is a guy that you might see in our office, and then they flip the page and they see the same guy. He's the foot doctor and he's the D doctor. It's just embarrassing. I think when it comes to the future of AI, there will be trends, I think, and you will need a professional who can help navigate, even the technology of AI prompting. I know how to make an image that doesn't look like every other image. That's valuable, because I think as AI develops and crawls the internet and finds what it should make pictures look like, I think there will be these kind of similar trends that you're going to need to learn how to avoid. And so it will be very complicated. I do not want to be the guy that's never going to go anywhere. It's going to take over everything. We should be humble enough to know AI is not going anywhere. It's only going to get bigger and better.
Yeah.
But I think there's still, what we don't want to do is give decision-making power to something that's not a person. And especially if this is your entire life's work built into your business, you don't want to outsource everything to someone that's not even a real person. And so it's just going to take a lot of wisdom to navigate all that stuff.
Yeah, that's good. It's funny that you have had that same experience years and years ago. I had a client we just started working with, and their first request, we have stock photography, and it's very rare that we do. And in their nature of their business, it's explainable. But they said that we need new stock photography because in our industry, our competitors, we've all been using the same stock photos for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We'll see how long the ones we found for them last, but they're the middleman, so they don't have example people we can use. Given the situation, we probably could have gone to one of their particular clients and taken photos, but there's some issues there. We had to work around it, but I was surprised to see that. But yeah, the stock photo thing, we don't ever recommend stock photos. It's our last resort if we can help it. I'd rather take a business owner's own photo because they don't have, I'd rather take a photographer's, have a professional photographer and take a photo shoot, because they can use those pictures for so many things, not just the website. They can get a lot of value out of that. So my first is always wanting to send the photographer in, and then if that doesn't work, I used to go in, but that's not my specialty. So then we can take that. Does the owner have a capability of taking pictures? Can we enhance the pictures that they take of their own stuff? And then the very last resort is stock photography. So I think that you've touched on a couple of really key things. One is the value of having true photos. Like you'll have more success from your own photos than from stock photography. What do you think are things here? Now, you went from Ann Arbor, so you went from the east side to the west side. What have you observed are differences between the businesses in the marketplace and how they use imagery? Have you found any differences in there between the east and west side?
It is culturally a very different place over here. I think it's a little bit more because Grand Rapids is the biggest city on the west side. It's the second biggest in the state.
Yep.
But where we were in Ann Arbor was very interesting because we felt like we were under the wing of Detroit. So there was this big market that kind of took over all southeastern Michigan, and they bled into each other. Whereas out here, I think it's a little different because Grand Rapids proper is what it is, and then you're surrounded by more suburban areas. I don't think that it's quite the same as it was in Ann Arbor. I think in terms of marketing, there's not much difference. Marketing is marketing. What you will find is that in the heart of the business owner, they might have different preferences. In the smaller suburbs, you might find owners that don't want to have any sort of that major metropolitan feel. I don't know, you might have experienced like trying to drag some clients into the present and future streaming. Even I've noticed this even with logo design, where I'm like, I'll see businesses and I'm like, really, you're still holding on to that logo from the 80s or 70s? It blows my mind. That's still working out for you. You haven't thought about a rebrand. And then, oh my gosh, the whole current events with Cracker Barrel, that's wild. But people just have this, it's not really nostalgia, but it's just this comfort. It's an emotional connection to whatever has been working is going to work. And it takes someone to say, I think we could move in a new direction and go in this new, push into this new era of your business. Whereas I think in the big cities, you see there's so much like competition that there's this feeling inside people of, man, I have to be that driving force. Or I think maybe on the West Side, it's maybe coming from more like the firms, the agencies, the marketing companies trying to convince people, this is a good idea, we should do this.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen the same thing when it comes to image, video, and web, that sort of stuff.
I think I would describe it as West Michigan having a more traditional mindset. I think you've got conservative values, but I think that with that comes a lot of loyalty with people and businesses. So when a small business builds their business on their logo from the 80s or 90s, they have their set of very loyal customers. They have strong referral and word of mouth. They haven't had to be competitive in their marketing strategy. But even then, it's a client base. Who they're going after might not respond to a bright, shiny, modern logo. They might already have such strong recognition with their old-fashioned logo that it's actually better to keep it. So there's a weird balance there. I think it depends on the audience. And I think the other key is West Michigan, I think they've grown on relationship marketing more than most people realize. I think, I guess it's maybe a fancier word for networking, but I think relationship marketing, I see it in like the food industry, in restaurants, where a lot of people that we talk about miss the day of going to the same restaurant and the restaurant owner being there and that relationship, and you build that lifelong customer. Those things are dying in the big cities. It's this little subculture, it's this suburb culture, and it doesn't translate to the big cities as well. I think there's a delicate balance there, depending on your audience and your industry, but that I haven't worked in the big cities, so I don't know, like I haven't worked in a New York or Chicago, but when I talk to developers that do, or when I network with people who do, they have a different mindset. They don't value those relationships long-term that I think people do in West Michigan.
Totally. And I think that gets just, to me, when I think of what is marketing, to me, marketing is just communicating, but with your market. So who are the people that I want to communicate with? And you need to know that. You can't have some pie in the sky idea of, I'm going to hire a marketing specialist for my business and that will generate sales somehow. Like that's a naive approach to how to run your business. I think you would hire a marketing director or specialist or someone whose job is marketing because you want to communicate both with your current customer base, but also the people that you want to be customers that aren't customers now. And when you think that will automatically generate more revenue, it takes time because you're building trust, you're building relationships. But if you ever neglect the importance of communication with your market, and you have to even ask, do you even know what your market is? Some people just think it's everybody. I want everybody. That's not feasible. So you're going to have to make some decisions and work with marketing people to identify, this is my market, this is how I'm going to communicate with them. Everything else is downstream of that based on if we do a good job. But if you think a marketing person is a salesperson, bad things will happen. In my experience, what I've seen.
It's funny. I had 3 calls in the last week with brand new business or brand new people wanting websites. They don't have them existing. And the first thing I'm like, who's your audience? Who's your target audience? The first question I'll ask. And the second question is, do you know where those people hang out? And do you know how to connect with them or where they are, how to talk to them? Because I think that's one of the biggest things a brand new business skips right over. People will call and think that a website is a business. I'm like, nope. It's not. It can be, but there's a whole lot of questions we have to talk about first.
And marketing people need to be aware of the trends of how society is changing and appreciate that. And so if my market is not sitting around saying, where do you want to go for dinner? The restaurant example. My market is not sitting around saying, where do you want to eat? Oh, we always eat here. Now it might be, this is what I saw on TikTok or Instagram, or they might literally just be door dashing things. And how you communicate to the people that have how do you build brand loyalty from zero to people that are not doing things the way they did them 10 years ago?
Yeah. How does a restaurant build brand loyalty through DoorDash versus sitting down in the restaurant? Like it is very weird. We could go into a whole hour of just restaurant marketing.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
But it's a classic example. Yeah.
Which makes me, I was just thinking about this, was the number of employees that I think in the future, and it's probably already happening, but like retail and that sector, maybe retail, restaurant, that sort of thing, the number of employees that are going to be asked to leverage their own personal like social medias, where you might need, if you have a small shop, small clothing shop, you might need, hey, I'm going to post this. I need every single one of you to share it. I need every single one of you to comment on it. That would be unheard of. Even, I would say it's a little unheard of now, and it was definitely unheard of before, where part of your role as an employee is a guerrilla marketing, boots on the ground type thing, but it's digital. And so I think you may see we're going to hire people to run the counter, and we're going to hire a marketing specialist, but they are not, there's a blurred line where the marketing person is going to come out and be like, hey, we're all pitching in on this. And it's not just, I need you to be in the TikTok. It's, I also need you to help the spread. And we're going to see that more and more, I think.
For sure. That touches on a kind of like future things. That's a really great tip for where marketing is, or what small and medium businesses, what's a tip they could do in it when it comes bringing it back to imagery and photography, using those communication mediums. What are some things that you think that small businesses could do specifically today, or some trends that are coming in with technology? What are some tips you could give local businesses?
Yeah, I think you should probably be pretty choosy. Like I was talking to someone who they're like, hey, we're doing such good work on Instagram that we're going to completely ignore TikTok. And Facebook is just this niche thing we need over here. All we do is cross-pollinate those things from Instagram. But they just decided, hey, this one thing, that's all we're going to do. But then the question comes down to, what's the next thing? And how will you even know about it? And oftentimes there are people that are killing it on TikTok now that they didn't know it existed until one of their employees mentioned it. And now they're doing great. And so I think always, like, never thinking like I'm done learning and growing. Man, you're going to need to always be listening, trying, experimenting. And I think you might even find that people will sign up for a social media account literally as a name placeholder, but with no intention of ever really using it, past experimental trying it here and there. I think the use of AI is going to get very complicated in terms of, I don't know how to say it other than the size of the internet is just going to keep growing and growing.
If you just look at the number of AI tools that have rolled out in the last 6 months, it's impossible to count them all, because every new software is basically backed with AI tech tools and technology. And we're even playing around with generating mini tools within our website projects that are backed by an AI. Like, it's not just one thing, and it's not just making the internet bigger. Its multiplication factor is ridiculous. How fast new things. I explained to somebody once, and I heard this prediction that for every $10, let's say you invest in 10 different AI tools to try out for your business, and just assume it's $1 per tool. For every $10 you invest and test, only one of those is going to actually stick around and be something that returns a profit. So that's the problem. You have to have a testing budget these days just to test software or just test an integration, because you don't know which one's going to be a winner, because it's happening and evolving so fast. That's wild.
I think marketing, like in-house marketing specialists, should feel like, man, I'm good at this. I, as part of my job as a marketer, I am going to always be bringing emerging technology to my owner, the boss, the whatever, even if it's a CEO. Like, there should be someone who takes it upon themselves to be the future ambassador, educator. I'm always looking to see how new technologies will benefit our bottom line. And that person will go beyond just, they put our ad in the magazine, or they keep up our website. Like, that person will become an invaluable advisor to the top levels of their company if they can embrace that as part of their role, and even they're part of their identity. I think the AI explosion, you're right, it's exponential, and it's using the internet to create the internet. And so there will be pitfalls. And you will need someone in your company who can say, yep, I know about it, steer clear of that. But who has that knowledge? And so if you're a firm or an agency, being able to do that for your clients is going to be worth its weight in gold. If you're a marketing person in a company, you have a job as a marketing specialist, you should really be trying to be an expert in all of those things, because it's just, how do we communicate with our market, and good and bad.
One of the things I see, and I think because you specialize in photography, I specialize in website design. We have people that specialize in copywriting. We have people that specialize in graphic design. I think one of the struggles I see with marketing directors and people in those roles is they are responsible for all of those things. And it's really hard to be really good at all of those things to the level, like, we're within our 20 years in one space. And so I feel like those people also need to have somebody in their pocket they can rely on, where they can bring in an expert and learn from them. Because even just myself, I think it's impossible to be an expert in all of those things. But I think you and I obviously are living proof that when you specialize in something, that's where success comes from. So I think it's a challenge for marketing directors to stay up, to do what the challenge you just gave them. I think that's a heavy challenge, but I think people like you and I can help fill the gaps and help be those expert resources that they can trust and rely on, and not necessarily be on staff.
Totally. And I would say there's something about having human beings that you can talk to that understand how to translate a need into an actual tangible thing, that maybe AI will completely show us that it can do that all on its own. But for instance, like when I was in, there were several jobs that I bid on where they said, hey, this is what we're thinking. And they're using terms that are emotional terms. I want this to be dramatic, or I want this to be warm or softer or inviting. As a photographer, I had to listen to those words and say, okay, I know how to do that in a camera with lights. I know how to, like, when you look at the picture that I just took and you say, oh, I love that, but could it be more dramatic? Okay, I know what you mean by that in terms of like where I need to move this light or what I need to do the exposure. And I think in the same way with you in web or with someone else in writing, when you hear someone that they haven't spent the years refining how to communicate this idea. And so they'll say things in more abstract terms. Oh, I wish this would just be more friendly. There's not a friendly button on a website or a camera or a video or a camera. And so you need to be able to translate that for them.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I tried to do as a photographer, and even when I talk about being a commercial photographer, what I mean is there's a language that business people speak. It's the language of sentiment that someone who's trying to hire a wedding photographer, like wedding photographer, and I shot weddings. And when you sit down with a client and they go, how much is it? And you go, this much. To me, it felt like, well, I know how to calculate it because I know how much I need to live divided by how many weekends there are in a summer. But other than that, how do I communicate that to you as a bride that it's worth that much? And so it's very complicated to say they're priceless images, but here's a price. And it's very tricky. Whereas a business person, they know if I spend $3,000 on a marketing campaign, I better make $3,000 or save $3,000. At least you're talking about ROI and you're talking about commerce. You're not talking about sentiment.
Yep.
And so being able to negotiate or deal and interface with those two different worlds and understand which world you're better suited for, I think is an invaluable skill. And that's why ideally, I think I've excelled just from the standpoint of, hey, let me get in front of you and talk to you and show you that I'm actually capable of communicating as a professional person. And I like to be friendly and I like to be fun and work fast and do that sort of thing. But I think people will find that if you boil the world of your business down to prompts that you have to enter into an AI, you're gonna need a human to help you at some point in whatever it is. And I think you will find that there's some sort of gap there that needs to be filled by an actual person.
For sure.
Yeah, and we don't even know what the future of AI is in terms of cost, environmental impact, all of that stuff. We'll figure all that out as we go.
Yeah. Let's leave with a piece of advice. What would be some advice you would give to somebody who's just starting out, maybe specifically in photography, or wanting to go into that as maybe a specialty within marketing? What advice would you give for just starting out in that?
Yeah, I think for photographers, I think of the camera. There's a lot of buttons and knobs on a camera, and you cannot think that the screen, just because I can see the screen on the back, that means I can endlessly play around. Like, there is a craft to learning your tools. And in the same way, when I would teach this, I would describe it like I'd ask, does anybody here know how to play the piano? And usually someone in the class took lessons as a kid. And I say, there's something about learning. I have an idea in my head, and for that idea to come out into the world, I do this with my fingers. Or if guitar chords, like I go from this to this. There's something about taking an idea and an emotion and translating it into moving my fingers.
Yeah.
But we do that with our cameras. So when I look at a picture and I think this is what I want, and my fingers just start doing it, like that takes years of practice. Learn your tools to be able to do that. There's so many different industries where this relates, where someone who knows, like my friend, he's a wizard at Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, I guess I could figure it out if I had 3 days and the boss didn't look over my shoulder, and I could populate those cells. And he's, yeah, but you can just do this. You don't know the tools. And that's how I am with Photoshop. People are like, man, the fact that you just think that way boggles my mind. It's just what you comes from using it all the time for years and years. So I would say my advice to anybody is, if whatever your tools are, you have to just spend tons and tons of time working them so that it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
And then learning how to manipulate and use light is crucial. Like, you cannot, as a photographer, you are writing and drawing with light. And so for the photographers, like, we ran a rental studio in Ann Arbor for a while. And part of our business was, there's a ton of like photographers that were just starting out, and they were like, hey, I only shoot natural light photos. And they'd take clients out to the park and shoot pictures. And I'm like, yep, I get it. That is not a plan. It's not a business plan. It's not a plan for success long-term in this industry. You have to learn how to shape and manipulate light. And so you have to become a great student of light. You have to watch TV and movies and think, how was that lit? You have to look at other pictures and examine their lighting setups. And it's just a non-negotiable thing if you want to be in the business as a career.
Sure. What about some tips for business owners who are trying to navigate that fine line between doing it yourself and hiring someone like yourself? What are some challenges or questions, or how would you help them make that decision?
Yeah, I think I try to have a very low barrier of entry to work with clients. I don't want them to feel like it's a daunting task. I got a job at U of M. It was actually U of M Flint. They had a 2-year contract to overdo their website and print materials. And there was lots of photographers that applied to that, but they chose me particularly because I was the easiest to hire. It was a very simple quote, a very simple process of bringing me on board. And I think a lot of business owners, they can feel like, man, this is all too much. This is daunting. The idea of, how do I even hire a professional photographer? And what I would say is, you should have someone, even if it's you as a business owner, but you should have someone who's marketing minded, who thinks that way, whether that's in-house or with a firm or agency. And then think about, what are the actual tangible things I need? Like a corporate headshot or executive management. I need this thing, and I need it to have some shelf life beyond the next week. Like, building a stable inside your own business of assets is crucial. But that takes someone to think, if you take a picture of one product, oh, I did this with a big group of restaurants in Ann Arbor where they wanted digital menus, tablets.
Yep.
And it was a great idea until you have to actually do it. And then you realize, do we need to do a photo shoot for every restaurant, and then every season, and then every time we change the menu? And do they all need to look the same? But someone needs to think, this is what we need. And then, but if you bring in a photographer thinking that he's a salesman for you, that's not gonna help your business either. I think the best thing to do would be to think, this is what I need, and I'm gonna fill that one need with a professional image. And whether that's an ad that you're going to run, invest in that. Like, we're trying this new magazine and we really want this campaign to go, we're going to invest. That makes perfect sense. But then those things, you'll see that picture in social over the next 2 years, or that'll live on the website for a long time.
Great idea. I'm going to take that advice for myself. Actually, that's a great idea.
But yeah, I would never put on a business owner that hiring a photographer is like a silver bullet. It's not. And so there's plenty of, I've run into a lot of regret over the years of, we hired a photographer, we spent this money, and then it didn't work out for us. And my whole goal as a commercial photographer is to erase that, to say, let's make sure that working with me is a positive interaction and that you get your money's worth. And even if that means, hey, let's just shoot some stuff, and that's how I'm going to introduce myself to you.
Sure.
There's a way to eliminate that regret or that fear.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking time to talk through these things. It's some really great information, great ideas. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can just go to my website, benjaminweatherston.com. And that's just a conglomerate, a portfolio of all my stuff. I've done a lot of different things over the years, and I love shooting. But when it comes down to the commercial side, it really is just working with business owners and marketing teams to move their ideas forward. And yep, just benjaminweatherston.com.
Super. I'll make sure that those are linked in our notes below. And thanks again, Ben. I appreciate your time. It's great, some great ideas. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. You have a great day.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.